question whether science is a force for good or evil. For the longest time, people have wondered, uh, are we doing the right thing when we apply science to create technology? Science in itself is a neutral body of knowledge. It's a pursuit of knowledge for its own sake. But its application leads to all sorts of things. It leads to the nuclear bomb, and it leads to the nuclear energy. It leads to a travel to Mars. It leads to all these robots. It leads to many things. And there has been a continuous adjustment in society to technology. Now, the technological pace has increased to such an extent that we don't even get a choice these days to decide whether we want a technology or not. Right? Very few technologies we are able to say no to. For example, human cloning is a no-no. It, we caught it in time and there were laws that were put in place and agreements and so forth. But a lot of the technologies that are coming out nowadays, they're coming out from corporations. Those corporations are moving very, very fast. We are entering, or we have entered, what is called surveillance capitalism, driven by machine learning, which means that these giant machines now, huge farms of machines, whose main job is to study us, put us under the microscope, see every of our behavior, and capture the data. And using the data now, they very easily manipulate us. I cannot help thinking that the sort of things that we have had in the last 10 years in US politics, for better or for worse, it wouldn't have been like this in the 1990s before the social media came about. I suppose we would all agree that one way or the other, the the society of today is a product of the social media. Social media is deeply informed by AI. It feeds to people what they want to hear. It, it panders to the confirmation bias. It creates society of similar thinking people, whether that thinking is right or wrong. So as we enter the new year, I thought we should reflect upon, and this was an unusual paper to take up. Usually we take a very technical research paper, we cover the paper, but today it wasn't really a paper, it's actually a web page from the Stanford Department of Philosophy on the ethics of AI. And I will sort of go through some of the topics that it covers in broad strokes. But what I want to do that in the first part, just quickly cover those topics, but then more broadly open it out. Like I want to know as a discussion, how do you guys feel about the contribution that you are making to society? Do you feel individually whether you have been a force for good or evil? It's sort of an introspective question, and I wanted to gain everybody's perspective. So if you look at this document, the first thing that it says, first of all, in philosophy, there has been a tremendous debate. What is the definition of moral? What is moral, right? For example, we say stealing is not moral, but a stealing on grand scale is capitalism, right? And capitalism seems to be the only successful economic paradigm we have. All others seem to sooner or later get into trouble. So, what is moral? That question has been there. It used to be derived from religion. The religious doctrines, the various religious doctrines would say this is moral and this is not, isn't it? In the Western Hemisphere, it has been from the Bible and the Torah of the Jews. And then in the Eastern, for example, in India, the Manu Smriti has been pretty influential. And then the moral code that the Buddhists and the Jains have are strong influences. So morality was derived from religion. But to the extent that we realize that religion can be a dangerous thing and lead to wars, the whole secular movement or this renaissance, the departure from uh, deriving everything from religion, led to the questions, fundamental questions. What is morality? Right? What is ethics? What is ethical behavior? I mean, it starts with philosophers like Kant talking about the so-called categorical imperative. One definition of good could be that action which, if everybody did, it would lead to the benefit of society. Right? So those are fundamental questions. We have to now ponder over it. We are asking this question: AI technology, is it being used ethically? But we are not very clear on what ethics is. We are not very clear what morality is. These are not quantifiable things. You cannot encode it. But there are companies which are gushing around and saying we can create artificial intelligence that can ensure morality. How can you do that? Right? We ourselves don't have a clear definition of morality. So what are these things doing? What are besides the debates, what are the problems we are facing? The first problem that they speak about, and it's there, is that of privacy and surveillance. The reason we have all these internet services free is because they are not free. We are paying for these with our lives practically. We use these services, and we are under the microscope. Every of our movement is tracked. Our in-depth profile is built, and those profiles are far more detailed than what even our most intimate relations know about when it comes to us. They can predict our behavior. There is a statement that when you enter a grocery store, the results of your shopping cart are much better predicted by an AI than by your shopping list. You always deck it with something else. Right? So this is the reality we are facing. And so there's a question, and this was in this bestseller book by Harari, The Homo Deus. He asked this question, and to quote him, what will happen to society, politics, and daily life when non conscious but highly intelligent algorithms know us better than we know ourselves? And we are seeing that, this question he asked in 2016. I suppose he must have asked that before the elections, because the election itself, um, all that, what was that, Cambridge Analytica and so forth, was a clear evidence that these machines could manipulate us, right? And now we are still going through that. Now people have just accepted it. They just assume that machines would manipulate us. Now these machines are then manipulated by foreign powers. So what then is democracy? Right? What is the point of democracy then? Is it still alive? And those questions are obviously very real. If you're in the United States, we are all facing an imminent danger, potential, some form of violence, a potential civil right, civil war, because 70 million people believe one thing and 80 million people believe something else. Right? And the two cannot be reconciled, because what they believe, what are facts to one, is fiction to the other. Quite literally, the two sides have different facts. So, as rational human beings, if they reason from those facts, they will come to entirely opposite conclusions, which they have come to. So, each side is absolutely convinced that the other side is wrong. And to a large extent, I believe that the blame is not in this or that politician. I think the blame squarely falls on us. We as engineers have not cared, I believe, about the ethical issues, and we have let it happen. Right. So anyway, that's just a thought, and I thought I'll start the new year with it. We are ending this course, and you are by now, I hope, very empowered, very enabled. You have learned a lot of AI. You will be using it. And I felt it would be good if we end these workshops, at least towards the end, we talk about these issues. The manipulation of behavior is rampant. Today, we create things, there's a concept called hooked. You deliberately try to create addiction. You want to make sure users come back. Is it any surprise? I mean, just as a remark somebody made, there are only two industries, two sectors that call their clients users. One is the drug industry, or the drug cartels, and the other is software. And I think it says something, users. So, there's a very interesting connotation, and we try to give them the same habits of addiction that the casinos try to give. You make these people to come to your site again and again and again. And we are doing such behavioral, such interesting analysis. I learned somewhere, and I believe it's true, that a Pokemon, the Pokemon game in which people were roaming around with their cell phones, Do you guys remember the Pokemon game?
Pokemon Go.
Right, Pokemon Go, I believe. Yes. So apparently, that was a deliberate experiment created by Google. It was the first experiment that asked this question: will human beings, can we just change their behavior? Quite literally, can we control their behavior? And they did. They would put these characters, what are those called, Pokemons, whatever, I'm not very familiar with it, but apparently they would put them in front of a cellular phone store just to sell some cell phones, or in front of some shopping, some shop front, for them to go there, and while they are catching their Pokemons, they also are implicitly doing window shopping, right? And as a social experiment, as a manipulation of the human beings, it was a tremendous success. And it sort of goes on. We know obviously about Cambridge Analytica and what it has been doing. We learn every single day that governments are hacked. Apparently, US government, we don't even know how many departments have been hacked. Certainly our military. I mean, just the thought of it, that our nuclear weapons, the department that controls and manages our nuclear weapons, has been hacked, right? Everything seems to be hacked. And behind a lot of these things, with the data that they steal, they seem to be fodder for AI agents to then use to manipulate us, it seems. Right? So it's fairly disturbing. That is an issue that needs to be addressed. The other is the opacity of AI. We are entering, and this week is about interpretation or explainability of AI. It's very core and central. It's not a marginal topic. It is rather a tragedy that most textbooks on AI, and most of these books on deep learning and TensorFlow and Keras and whatnot, none of them seem to have this as one of the core topics. Uh, we seem to be caring only for the accuracy of our predictions, and interpretability be damned. Why is it making those predictions? With it goes accountability, completely goes accountability about this. So biases that are there get perpetuated. So there was a system created to uh, decide whether somebody is going to be a repeat offender, recidivism. It turns out that they created such a system, and it was actually put into production. Then somebody pointed out, some researchers pointed out that its accuracy is no better than random people, just random guesses by random people. And it was deeply infested with bias against the blacks, right? It had all sorts of problems. So the other issue that it brings up is the exuberance with which non-technical people and the overconfidence with which they adopt AI. Uh, we create hype. Frankly, our industry creates hype. There are movies coming about, there everything happening, that AI is so powerful, and people believe that it is way more powerful than it really is, and they use it with catastrophic results. We know about the Amazon's experiment. Amazon was had two failed experiments, I believe, in this regard. They tried to hire people based on an algorithm, and it was a disaster. It was terribly discriminating against women and other protected classes. Why did it do so? If you really think about why that happened, the causation seems to be that it read from data of past hiring in Amazon. And what the AI did logically is understand the pattern. And it turns out that if you look at the historic data, there was endemic racism, there was endemic discrimination against women, unacknowledged. And so when you feed that data into it, the AI learns to be racist and misogynist in equal parts, I suppose. I'm just sort of putting words there, but sort of like that. And I don't think Amazon would be the only one. It became famous. I'm sure that lots and lots of companies which would be guilty of using software like this and coming to or having biases. So the fact that AI, we are not caring that AI must explain itself.
See,
We are just so enamored by its accuracy, by its ability to do things.
Asif, when it's leaving deep learning aside, right? Any Bayesian model would have done that.
Yes, when I use AI, I include all of machine learning in it, not just deep learning,
Hmm.
all of machine learning in it. Okay?
Because
So
our biases are basically a manifestation of past observations.
exactly, the data had biases. You're feeding you're you're teaching the AI with that data, which has bias. So of course it will learn the biases, right? And you don't acknowledge the biases because what has been our strategy? I mean, uh, we always believe, I mean, see, this country has made a tremendous progress when it comes to Black rights, right? With all its flaws and blemishes, we are in a far better place than we were in the 1960s or 1950s. But while that is a positive news, it is also true, and I believe is globally true. It is also true in India. It would be the discrimination against the Dalits, which is absolutely horrendous, and the Shudras, right? Absolutely no different, and in fact, many degrees worse, many orders of magnitude worse. So, in spite of progress in both the countries against the underprivileged people, the discriminated people, it is also true that we like to claim that more progress has been made than has actually been made. People would like to believe that the problems are solved. In India, there are so many protests that let's get rid of reservations. The problem is solved now, but it isn't solved. And in US, we don't have the system of reservations. There was affirmative action, so sort of something like that. But if you talk to the blacks, they will assure you that the situation has not improved as much as people would have you believe. Likewise for women, like for me, it was very eye-opening when the Me Too movement came about. It seemed that like I was under the belief that people who molest women or mistreat them in the workplace, they are like maybe 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 10,000 or something. They're just the sort of uh, very, very bad people. And
Yes.
then the Me Too movement comes about, and it seems that if I were to look around at 20 in a room of 20, I could fairly be sure that somebody is mistreating women in the workplace or has done something terrible against them. And that is a shocking realization that when you enter a room, you face that reality. Right? So progress is far less than we would like to. All the data that we have is, and when you feed it into AI and you train the AI with it, AI will learn what you teach, and it will learn the biases.
I think as if I was making a little nuanced point that
Mhm.
and there are biases in human beings. And
Yes,
if we have to call out AI as specifically something with a problem, the the basic data that we need to see is humans are evolving faster, but the machines that humans created are evolving slower. Is there evidence to that fact?
there is evidence. For example, uh, in US at least, after the Me Too movement, there's a huge bit of a concern to remedy these situations. I don't know how much will happen, but we are doing that. But the data that we are using is nobody is realizing that the data, if you look at 20 years worth of data, then during those times the social mores have changed. There's a lot of bias in previous data that you don't have in today's data and so forth.
Okay. Yeah.
So the AI will learn from that. And so, I mean, see, the point is not so much whether you can fix AI. The point is you can fix AI, but how will you fix AI unless you acknowledge the biases and you have your eyes open for the biases, right? So that is it. And the other point that these people make, which is that they call it the algocracy. There's the plutocracy, the rule of the rich. There is the aristocracy in which aristocrats rule. Democracy is supposed to be this. Then but algocracy is all about the rule of the algorithms, and we are living in the reign of algorithms. Algorithms rule our lives. Everything we do is controlled through algorithms. And there was an excellent book that they refer to. By the way, that book is very good. It is called The Weapons of Mass, a Math Destruction. If you get a chance, it is 4 years old book, I believe. Um, Read it. Weapons of Math Destruction. I don't know if anybody is familiar with that book. By the way, Kate, you're very socially aware. Would you agree? Would you concur with what I said, or would you like to say something on that topic?
Oh, yeah, I agree that, if we're using data that encompasses humans and human experience and history, naturally all the biased acts of humans and our judgments and our actions is going to be baked into that data. It's kind of unavoidable. How we counteract that and correct the bias is a huge challenge.
Right. So, all right, guys. So this goes on to talk about, for example, bias in decision systems. There was this whole thing called predictive policing, which is going on, by the way. You can predict where the drug exchanges will take place, and so on and so forth. But it also brings about the potential that you would perpetuate, like you would mark certain neighborhoods as perpetually bad, right? And so on and so forth. So there are a lot of things. Many of you must have watched the movie Minority Report, right? In which you can know that a crime is going to be committed and you can catch it before it is committed. It's a terrible idea, right? That algorithms can actually be used for such purposes. And so what does it mean? You could be arrested. If you really think about it, you could be arrested because the algorithm thinks you're about to commit a crime, right? And you could be charged of a crime because an algorithm thinks you were going to commit the crime, just the thought of it. Right? And so there are all of these issues that we talk about. There are issues about robotics, robots, what can they do? In Japan, we use robots to interact with the older people, a lot of the aging people. We give them warm skins. They apparently are warm and fuzzy. They have human expressions, and people are trying really hard these days to give robots a very human expression when they are designed to be caregivers. Perhaps that is good, but it also asks this question that is it really a very comfortable thing to do? There are people who are proposing to Alexa and to all of these, whatever these things are called, assistants, Google Voice or whatever, right? Because these lonely people at some point have no one to talk to. So when they talk to these machines give intelligent answers apparently. And these people get so touched by it that nobody has talked to them so nicely. They actually propose to marry these people because they're sure behind it is some intelligence, some human being actually there, right? But so far it is all fun. But what happens the day somebody starts manipulating these emotions, this sense of falling in love with the machines, and manipulates you into buying a lot of things, into spending all your money or giving all your money to them or whatnot, or maybe, God forbid, commit a crime, right? So all of those are potentials, So it sort of talks about that. Other question that is increasingly there that they talk about is the sex robots and what does it do to human beings. Already human beings are being objectified with respect to this. I mean, when I look at the movies now, maybe I'm a bit old fashioned, but I sometimes have to just walk away from it because I feel that it sort of degrades, or it's sort of, the way it objectifies human beings is a little bit too gross. It wasn't like that 20 years ago, right? And to some extent, a lot of it has come about because of the technology. And now you create these uh, robots, and then what does it do to human relationships and so forth? So this book talks, this sort of article talks a lot about that. It talks about the effect of automation. If automation is going to get rid of all your jobs and not create new jobs, then is there a moral imperative not to use that AI, not to use that automation? Right? It's important because we all collectively own the earth. The guy who has the money and can afford the automation, if he can do that, it will be a winner take all society. If we know for sure that new jobs are not going to be created and this will only eliminate jobs, how is it moral to allow those automations to come in, right? And it is a question that has to be asked because if you look at it, people talk, and this article points to something called the dumbbell economy. The dumbbell economy that they talk about is the economy in which there are high-tech people, highly talented people who are in great demand and paid a lot. Then there are very low-tech people, people without skills, who who are in high demand to do, those hourly wages or basic service jobs, and they are paid very poorly. But the in-between world that used to belong to, qualified jobs in factories and offices, the white collars and so on and so forth, they are disappearing. That's the dumbbell, is the rod in between the two belts, I suppose, two sides, right? And those are disappearing. So you are either in the category of highly paid people, or you're in the category of people who are just, what is the phrase they use? Burger flippers, right?
Living check
And
to
so,
check.
go ahead, Kate.
Living check to check.
Living check to check, yes. And that's the invisible poverty. It's the invisible poverty. I mean, it's a question worth asking, that has homelessness increased since all of these things came about, right? Has the disparity of wealth increased? It has increased. It's not a question worth asking. But the question is, are we responsible for it? I mean, if you have to pin the blame to somebody, would it not be the tech sector to pin the blame to? Would it not be on our foreheads that the blame should be stuck? So those are questions sort of worth asking. The reason we ask that is, ultimately, these are questions that we engineers don't ask. We work for these mega corporations. And those mega corporations certainly are not asking. They are profit-making machines. So who is going to ask those questions? Everybody else seems to be disempowered, right? Or not capable of asking these questions. So somebody has to be a full human being, not just an engineer. Right? Realize that they have children and grandchildren in this world, and who will inherit this earth, and they will inherit what we leave them. Right? So those are the questions here. And so in this phrase, this article obviously goes on to other things. So for example, autonomous vehicles and autonomous. I just saw a cartoon which I found very funny. A dog is looking at a Roomba, one of those, automated vacuum cleaners, and it is asking the question that if I poop and you spread the whole poop all over the room, who is to blame? Right? And I suppose that brings out the dilemma about the whole thing, right? So, for example, when a car comes and hits you and it was in full automation, who is to blame? Were you driving badly, or was the car to blame? It's a machine. Can you take it to court? And what are the implications? We have to work that out. There's a whole question of automated weapons. As you probably are aware, there are so many videos emerging on YouTube of latest and greatest war technology. One of them I saw would literally rain down small watch-sized little drones. And each of those drones would be programmed to find human targets. The moment they found a human, they would just come into the face of the human and explode, right? Terrible, just destroying the person. So these technologies exist now, and the AI in them is capable of knowing that this is human and not, for example, a box or a stone or something like that. And so when you destroy people like that, what are the ethical implications of that? Right? Is it okay to destroy your enemy like that? How do you know that those are not civilians and those are enemy combat? I mean, those are truly enemy combatants, and so on and so forth. So those are the issues with the automation that this article raises. And then comes the whole question of whether machines should have ethics as they grow and move more towards developing intelligence, even very narrow intelligence. The question, therefore, is how much of ethical concerns they should have. So apparently, Kant made the statement that the more reasonable a person is, the more well-reasoned or logical a person is, the more ethical he is likely to be. Well, I suppose the years after Kant have proven otherwise. We know that some of the worst human beings, Hitler and whatnot, they were extremely analytical people. They were very well-reasoned people. And with cold calculation, they could just go and throw people into gas chambers. So that kind of reasoning simply wouldn't fly today. But so then the question is, what do you do? What is it? This article mentions the Isaac Asimov's proposed three laws of robotics of 1942. It says the first law is that robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm. Second is a robot must obey the orders given to it by human beings, except where such orders would conflict with the first law. And the third law is a robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first and the second law. Very interesting things. People have debated this. The whole thing is that, is it time to encode these things into the machines? When will it do? We are already talking about the singularity and the super intelligence, right? And what will happen? But even before that, we have to ask the other question. We use AI as tools, as objects, but can they be subjects? As these things grow in intelligence, do robots have rights? Right? Is it okay to is some behavior towards the robots unethical? So the one example that is given sometimes is, you remember the Boston Dynamics has this big dog and so forth. Have you guys seen the videos of that? Those robots?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So those are amazing machines, but they behave like, animals, four-legged animals. They can crawl, they can do things, and they can't fall. They behave like mules or dogs and so forth. And you see videos of people kicking them, and they're able to survive the kicks. They regain their stability. But one of the questions that comes somewhere along it, to the extent that we can project sentient feelings onto machines, we do feel and wonder whether it is fair to treat a robot so badly, right? To push it around so hard and so on and so forth. And these questions will become more and more pertinent as these machines begin to look more and more human, or at least living. We human beings have a tendency to project our emotions onto other things around us, right? So the fact that people propose to Alexas and all this Google assistants, etc., is clear evidence of that. Right? Many of people are totally in love with their car and they talk to their cars, and this cars are not even intelligent at this moment, right? And so, what happens when these robots become more and more like humans? At least they project the appearance of being like that. And then obviously the last question that this article deals with is that of super intelligence. Truly, what is the implication if there is a super intelligence around? That reminds me of a TV show I like very much, actually, A Person of Interest. It is an old TV show. Some of you may have seen it. Anyone has known about that? Person of Interest. It must be there on either Netflix or Prime or somewhere. Check it out, see what it is. It's about a super intelligence that has been created. And it asks fundamentally those questions. There's one super intelligence, which is a force for good, and there is another super intelligence, which is a force for evil. As always in this TV shows, this war of the good and evil and so forth. But I believe that the TV show, as I watched it, I was quite amazed at how well it articulated some of the fundamental ethical issues and concerns we have with artificial intelligence. And it sort of seems to be coming. And at the end of it, actually, this article towards the end, it asks about a very interesting question. It talks, these days we talk of the so-called great filter. A great filter is the time when past singularity, when these robots, these machines have become truly intelligent, and once they have become truly intelligent, they have gotten rid of us completely, and humanity has completely vanished. And is that the logical end of AI? Is that what we are all heading towards? Right? Creating the AI that will end humanity. And then it actually says that maybe the great filter explains the Fermi paradox. So the Fermi paradox is this thing. The world is filled, the universe is filled with gazillions of stars, and there must be gazillions of planets and whatnot. How is it that we don't seem to find intelligent life anywhere? Right? So one explanation would be that all life form ultimately grows in intelligence, and then they create their own artificial intelligence, and those artificial intelligence finally kill the life forms. And so life forms can't be seen because what you see is the graveyards of all these life forms. The AI has destroyed all those life forms. It's just an interesting thought, actually, that could the great filter be an explanation of the Fermi paradox, right? And is there something as likely, the great filter, where intelligence, super intelligences, will get rid of us, right? And all life forms after that. So that is that. And so that's the gist of this paper. It ends with such thoughts. It doesn't go any further. Not a paper, this sort of a long article from the Stanford Philosophy Department. And well, that is that. So guys, today I've sort of been speaking for quite some time. What I would like to do is just ask this question from all of you. I want to hear your views, like, and see what you guys think. I'll sort of go in the order in which your names show up in this Zoom. Um, let's have a discussion of what it all means. Balaji, what would you say? How do you feel about the technologies we create and the work we do?
Um, so, Asif, it's, I mean, in my personal life, I use Google. There's a Google I talk to switch on the lights. Really exciting. You know, I mean, there's a small things I do, and then I saw this Netflix series you suggested. Then I saw how are these things controlling us, to a point where the whole population could be made to think in a certain way and act in a certain way without we knowing about it. So, so there should be ethics. Ethical boundary needs to be drawn for this technology. Well, technology is like a tool. Without a screwdriver, you can't pull out a screw easily. The tools have come for that purpose, and you know, we need to use it instead of misuse it. It's as simple a thought in my mind. That's it.
Nice. But do you feel that overall your life has been a force for the good?
I mean, can you repeat that?
Like, do you feel that the technical work you have done in your lifetime has been overall a force for the good?
Yeah, I mean, if I do a depth first search, I mean, at the top level, reliability. So the reliability means it goes into the car to make it reliable. But if car itself is a good thing, I mean, if I go deeper and deeper to see the work that I did at the superficial level, it has done good. But if I go deeper and see, is it serving the bigger cause? I don't know. The answer is I don't know.
Right. Nice. Thanks for your input. Dennis, what do you say?
What was that paradox you were saying? The name?
Fermi's paradox.
Right. So there's this book. It's like a new sci-fi. Ruud actually told me to read it, and I never did, but I read the summary. Actually, President Obama, like in many occasions, said he recommends reading the book because it's pretty you know, forward thinking. So it's called the three-body problem.
The three-body problem. Okay, I'll read that.
Yeah. So essentially it says the universe is like a dark forest. Intelligent species actually view each other as threats.
Oh yeah, so, the dark forest theory, yes.
Right. So the moment we send signals outward, we're kind of asking to be killed off by a sniper, which is kind of unsettling since I think there's a report that we received some signal from a planet like 4 light years ago, just recently. So, but in that measure, you know, like I think we still need to sort of accelerate like where we are, or we won't have anything at all. So, you know, there's another side of this, I guess. So we need to compete with the aliens, I guess.
Yes, we are competing with the aliens at this moment for survival.
Right.
Yeah. So for others people who haven't heard of the dark forest theory says that the reason the forest is completely quiet in the dark is because if you make noise, you make your presence known, and predators will come and essentially you'll be food. Right? And the way people apply it to aliens and this concept is that they say, okay, look at what people do to once they know there is a land. For example, they often, one example in this movie, what was that movie? Arrival. A general made is that the reason we are scared of these aliens who have come is think about what happened when we went to Australia. Well, we destroyed all the original people, Aborigines, and enslaved them and took over the land. And I suppose the point he was making is he believes that if aliens come in any form, you should just assume that they are for evil. They'll conquer us and enslave us.
And there's another thing. I'm pretty sure it's probably crazy. Basically, this guy, I think from the former Israeli government, says like aliens has been contacting the United States for decades, or whatever the whatever it is. And there's like a space federation, and this aliens say like we're not ready. And what I think is that I think as a species, our resume should be how well we take care of our planet and
Exactly.
other species on the planet. Like it's an indication whether or not we are like civilized, I guess, in the in the intelligence sense. So if we can use AI for environment protecting the animals, the plants, or whatever, I think it can be good.
There was a movie called Transcendence. I don't know if anybody saw that. That was it. There, the AI took over the responsibility of protecting the planet and did an exemplary job of it. So, anyway, see that movie. Harini, what do you think?
AI, presently when I see it is helping, but then deep down I feel worried about what it can do, not just for the humans, for the planet. And I think we are moving at a very fast pace, and so that is a threat for all our resources and the human beings, and even for our emotional well-being. That's what I feel. Yes, it is helpful in the making us connected, or healthcare and all that, but
In other words, you're concerned. You're very concerned.
yeah, I am.
Yes, remember that when you go and get a job and you contribute.
Yes.
Kate, what do you think?
I think at times that, especially the events of the past 4 years, especially, that it might not be a bad thing to have robotic overlords, that it might be something that humanity deserves. If we can't prove we can't take care of things ourselves, we might need better replacements.
Oh, so you're inviting the singularity.
I'm wondering if it's not the worst thing given people.
Yeah. Interesting.
Well, we need, well, on a more serious note, we need to make sure that we have government performs its proper role of being able to regulate, that we're not just ruled by mega corporations and oligarchies, that democracy means something.
Yes.
And there's a lot of practical actions that can be taken on that. So I have hope for that in the short term. I don't think the singularity would happen in my lifetime anyway.
No, this democracy, in my view, is something worth cherishing. And I'm very concerned that we engineers would be guilty of getting rid of it. We practically are guilty of getting rid of it, seeing the events of the last 4 years. If blame has to be put somewhere, it has to be on our heads.
Yeah, well, to make up for Cambridge Analytica, I did hear that Zuckerberg, as maligned as he is, a lot of it deservedly so, is putting money into making sure local various low-level electoral offices had money to run their elections properly, given the lack of the funding should of course come from the federal level, but we know that the federal level has been really hampered by having a mobster in charge. Yeah, I'll say it.
You saw the headline news on New York Times today, isn't it? The interesting phone call that's being talked about.
Oh yeah, it's just so mobster. It's the same as like with Ukraine. It's like definitely quid pro quo. It's like, here, find some dirt on my opponent, or we'll yank your funding. I mean, it's just so improper.
Yeah.
We need a lot of cleanup in this country. And attacking misinformation, disinformation in general globally. That's something we can properly attend to with AI functions. I mean, when they've attacked the problem and really wanted to solve it instead of just focusing on the dollars, social media companies have been able to. YouTube's been able to clean up. I was reading Wired articles that YouTube has been able to, lessen people going down rabbit holes of conspiracy theories because they would recommend another even more radical video.
Yeah.
And they've actually squelched that pretty well. So,
Good.
they're kept accountable. It can be fixed.
Yeah, I hope so. It was terrible. Actually, when I see the YouTube recommendations that pop up, it's quite uncanny in how well it anticipates what is it that you want to watch. In my case, it keeps recommending me all the AI video. One
Yes.
presentation, one seminar after another on AI. So that's how I keep up. In a way, it's become the newspaper, because what's happening in the AI world, somebody would post a YouTube and then YouTube would come and recommend it to me. That's been happening for some time. Premjit, what do you think?
I think at the core of all this is the human desire for wealth, right? And I don't fault like a large population of engineers with the responsibility of having to save the world and not doing well at it, right? It's the few people who drive the corporations who determine what the engineers' work will go ahead and do. Engineers did good work long ago. When you say supply chain management and the technologies that I worked with, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's, you're using mathematics to optimize and reduce wastage. That was a good use of engineering mind, right? You're figuring out algorithms that will optimize the supply chain and reduce wastage. Effectively, you're squeezing money out of the system and making it available for good use. I think in the recent past, when the focus was all around advertising and you're gathering a lot of human attributes to be able to target them well, that's where this phony thing of, the products like Gmail and Google Maps and so on, the actual product is us. We became the products.
We became the products. Yes.
But there's huge money in it, because the money that was otherwise going in television advertising and billboards and all those, there's a large amount of advertising money that got channeled into what Facebook and Google revenue is, right? So that kind of changed a few things. But at the same time, if I look at now the amount of innovation that's happened, now we are able to have, you can speak to a computer and it's pretty much able to recognize your voice, and you can understand the nuances between the different people in the house. All that is advancements that happened because engineering moved forward. So that's all good.
See, some people believe, Premjit, and I think with merit, that if we just say that we are, like engineers often say that these are big companies, the powerful make the decision and they make it based on their need for money, for the greed for wealth and so on and so forth. But it is also believed that, see, they are powerful and they get away with things because we let them get away with, because engineers are not taking, as human beings, they are rather deficient in their social and political responsibilities. Human beings are a political species. And if you just completely abdicate social and political implications of your work and don't stand up for it, then of course workplace will be designed in such a way to squeeze you to just maximize profit at the cost of society, which is what is happening. There has to be more social and moral sort of a backbone to the engineer, which in my view is sorely lacking. Most people, for example, if you ask them to talk about anything, just economics, anthropology, sociology, basic things that are the core of human existence, and they wouldn't be able to tell you. Most engineers would be, forget about even humanistic things, even basic economics. Ask them to differentiate between the Keynesian economics and maybe the Chicago School of Economics and different thoughts of economics. Like, how do they differ? Most people can't tell you, right?
But should they?
Yes, they should. We as human beings do. See, this is a thing. If you step out of engineering departments, you go and do, I don't know, a bachelor's in arts and sciences, you will be forced to take courses in which you become a much more well-rounded human being. In engineering, we have always made the excuse that the course burden is so much that there is no time for humanistic learning. At the end of it, we are producing people who are absolutely feel no sense of responsibility of the implications of their work for good or for evil. They would rather believe that the work they're doing is for good.
The basic definition of a corporation needs to change. There's great new ideas of like certified B corporation, where social goals, social good goals are written right into the
Exactly.
expectations. But your average the standard legal definition now of a corporation is that financial, the quarterly profit is the bottom goal. In fact, they want to punish executives who don't seek that, who actually try to meet social and environmental good goals.
Right.
So that's something that needs to be fixed, because there's been a long standing attitude of check your conscience at the door when you go to work for people at all levels.
Yeah, and some of these business models work. I'm reminded of Costco. Costco apparently, as I don't know if you guys know, it makes no profit on the things it sells you, and they have no intention to make profit or become the next Amazon. They make their money from the annual membership fee. So I felt that in a way they are trying to bring the best value to their client base, not sort of treat them as things to squeeze money out of, but serve them. And at the end of it, and I don't know, maybe Costco is doing something evil.
Not,
I
not
don't
true.
know.
They actually
It's
pay
not that they don't make money. They have very strict rules for their merchandising department in terms of how much you're allowed to charge a premium. So that's basically baked in the system.
Upper limit is 13%. I looked at the case study. It's 13%. Now, 13% margin, as you know, in business, by the time you account, if you upmark a product between the wholesaler and your price by 13%, it barely covers your costs.
It puts a challenge on the merchandising team to go find good products.
Yes.
They could source it at such rock bottom prices. They
Yeah.
can still survive, and actually they're doing well. Yeah.
They're doing well, but if you look at their revenue model, they're making most of their money from membership, right? Not from the selling of things. So, and they have a strict rule. They don't want to mark up anything more than 13%, I believe, is their ceiling. So anyway, so I don't know if such business models can take off, or whether, and about Costco, of course, we don't know the whole story, whether they're also doing some evil. But when I read about this case study in detail, I was quite impressed that somebody's thinking like this and not just trying to be a hockey stick growth curve like Amazon. So that's that. Shankar, what do you say?
I come from a completely different background, environmental sciences, oceans.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, things are, in the tech sector, things are moving so fast. In ocean, the sensors that measure temperature have not changed in the last 50 years. And then there are a lot of, even in 2000, people used to see that I used to see, analyze sea surface temperatures,
Mm-hmm.
oceans and the estuaries. We used to see that high temperatures even on a normal day.
Mm-hmm.
Even power plants used to come and tell us that oh, what we are discharging is not making an impact. It is the temperature rise you see in the normal
Mhm.
temperature due to the warming is more impactful than whatever temperature we are discharging into the ocean. So that is the scene there. But things here, it's all click-through rates. I work for a book company. It's all based on click-through rates. The revenues through click-through rates.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's the way it is. Yeah, things are very rapid here. So that's the way the business runs, and especially as many others talked about this pandemic, the small businesses completely evaporated. The big corporations have completely gobbled up their businesses.
Yes.
They don't have the big businesses have the AI, all the AI. They can do whatever
They want. Yes.
So basically, yeah, that is. So a lot of people are unemployed, and the small business is completely gone down. So big impact.
As the owner of a small business, I can speak to the pain. Right. So no, but so Shankar, to your question, the question was, for the work that you have done in your life, at the end of it, would you feel that you have a clear conscience that it was all for the a force for the good?
Yeah. So to be honest, no.
No.
Yeah. So because I come from a complete, that's why I started with a completely different environment. I coming from oceans, atmosphere, like it's a completely different idealistic world there out there. Yeah. Compared to it, uh, I would say that the 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 work I did in the ocean atmospheric field that are much bigger. I feel good about it than the work I am doing for the last 10 years. I would say.
So Shankar, you would agree, right, that engineers shouldn't abdicate their political and social responsibilities.
Yeah,
They should be engaged. They should be engaged and seeing how they affect the world. No?
I think I also come to that point. I don't know, like how many engineers have the power to do it, as Premjit also pointed out. A lot of uh, even in oceanography, a lot of people wanted to save the planet, save the oceans. There are not many opportunities. All of them, they are in this click business now.
Yes. No, but see, Shankar, it's also the thing is, you power is never given to you.
Yeah.
Power is just taken. If people like democracy is people taking the power, right? The kings didn't just give power to and foster democracy by any means. In the same way, if we want to have more empowerment of the engineers, first the engineers have to be socially and politically active and caring for the causes.
That is a lot of responsibility for the engineers, I would say.
But all other human beings are doing it. All other people are doing it. People graduate from arts and sciences. They are far more socially responsible than engineers are like in their tunnel vision
There needs to be more civics and
or civics.
critical thinking skills taught at lower grades before college.
Yes.
But as if, I mean, I would say that that applies to the whole human population, right? I mean, there's nothing specific to engineers here, and specifically people working on AI are not the reason why all the things are going wrong.
No, we have
Engagement.
disproportionate influence on the world. Right? We have disproportionate influence on the world at this moment.
No, I would argue this way, as if you take a guy working in Monsanto,
Mhm.
every research that they do, they know what they're doing, right? And so if you're looking at, let's say, spoiling the earth, putting in chemicals there, and the pesticide model by which how some of those Monsanto pesticides work, there is an inherent flaw in all that. So one can argue everybody who's working in those,
It'd be, yeah. No, definitely. Everybody
if you're
needs,
working in a tobacco company, you know
right?
what you're doing, right? If you're
Yeah.
working in a leather industry,
You know
and
what you're doing. Yes. Very true.
I wouldn't single out AI engineers as people who have to have an extra responsibility. It's like everybody, entire humanity.
Responsibility. What I'm saying, Premjit, is scientists these days, as they get more and more specialized in any area, whether it is computer science, whether it's biotech or anywhere, generally, the academic curriculum tends to be very focused on their specializations. Along the way, they have gained, two things have happened. They have gained tremendous influence in shaping the world, and they have also, along the way, uh, they have practical illiteracy of social and political implications of their work. And if there is any hope for the planet, that needs to change. I mean, I'm going back to Plato's statement when he starts by saying man is a political animal, and it is that power is, the power structure is shaped by people. If people are not willing to take the power in their hands, they become powerless. Then the guy who is willing to take power, usually the rich, acquires all the power and controls everybody. So what are scientists doing in any of these disciplines? What are they doing? And what are we doing? Right? As people who are learning AI, we have a potential to do a lot of harm. Right? I say that, I mean, from my personal experience, for example, I had a choice to work in a sort of a weapons industry at one point in life, and I was eminently capable of that. I was a physicist and a computer engineer, and I could have really been utilized. But consciously, at least I had the sense as a young man to not go there, not to bring home money that may have blood on it. So I don't know, but if I still have that kind of consciousness, for example, the work that I'm doing, I deliberately chose an area of work, which is HR, things where the potential to do harm is very, very, very low. That was a conscious decision. I consciously chose not to work with the Googles and so forth of the world. I chose companies where I could walk home with a clear conscience and say, this work has not harmed. My work is not harming people to the best of what I can make out. It's more a force for the good. But is it? I don't know. Even then, I'm doubtful. But I think we need to think a little bit about it, though. The ethics is, that's my feeling, Premjit.
And where I would kind of take that thinking process in this conversation, in the context of this conversation, Asif, is I think with the AI, we need to have a way to inherently measure the bias that is going into all our AI, right? I mean, that it's happened not just with AI today, it has happened long ago also. If you were building a Bayesian model, which will do a recommendation, right? The recommendations are a function of something in the past. So as engineers, we need to devise ways to control the behavior of the model such that when you have the right set of management folks who want to make that control happen, the control should be easily doable. We shouldn't leave systems in a way where that becomes the constraint why it cannot be controlled. Right? That is a contribution we do as engineers.
Yeah. See, that's a very good point, and it speaks to the bias, but it doesn't speak to the control. A completely unbiased AI can still be a force for evil in the hands of the people who control it. So, for example, a completely unbiased system can essentially be, its goal can be to make you spend all your money, hard-earned money, and it will efficiently go and do it. Okay? Because it's controlled by people whose entire motivation is to make you spend money. I mean, what is Google's entire motivation, for example?
I fight with my daughter every day telling her that YouTube is kind of drawing her deeper and deeper into it and she has to let go, but it's hard.
Yes.
Yeah, not only YouTube, Pramjit, like even any game, you look at video games,
Yeah,
they're all addictive, and then they're made with the power of AI.
Yeah, there I curse the AI that's doing it, right? I can't control her because she's enjoying it. That's why she's doing more and more of it.
Addiction. You actually get a dopamine kick every time you look at, a message comes onto your cell phone.
Yep.
So by the way, there's so many Kates, I can't tell. So I can see Arithya. Arithya, would you like to speak up? What do you think?
Yeah, so I am also coming from a little bit different background. So I'm more coming from the hardware side of things. So yeah, so I think my work is partly responsible in developing the chips that kind of enable all this software and AI stuff to work. But then, I mean, for majority of us, I think it's kind of, I don't know. I don't feel like I have the power to change things. I think like like many others here are kind of echoing this similar kind of thought. It's more of like,
Yeah,
yeah, you do what you
but you have to earn your money. See, we engineers have always given that excuse that we are powerless. We do what we are told to do. But see, power is always acquired. Nobody gives it to you. It's one of the things you learn if you get educated in the humanities. You take a course in political science or things like that. You're more aware of it, right? So women are not, for example, getting rid of sexism because because the men are handing it over to them. Uh, They are standing up for themselves. Kate, would that be a fair statement?
Definitely.
Mm.
All the women's marches, all the everything.
Yes,
Yeah.
power is acquired, never given, never given. But think about it. When was the last time somebody offered you an extraordinary promotion just because you worked very hard? If you notice how promotions are made in these companies, it is the guy who is asking for it, demanding it, right? And among
Right.
people who are demanding it, only in that small subset, they look for the guy with the highest contribution and give it to them, right? But what about the guy who's quietly slogging on and producing great work? You know that they don't get promoted very easily. Everybody wants to have such a guy under them so that they look good. Nobody wants to promote them as their equal and be
Indeed.
competitor.
Right.
So
That's a
power,
Yeah,
fact.
that reminds me of a very interesting statement. I think someone told me, like, I think it's probably Winston Churchill or someone who said that he went and he saw that that there are two lines. One line is for people who want to do work, and then there was a second line which is for people who want to take credit. So the line where people were standing for taking credit was so long that he decided to stand in the other line.
interesting, nice. Well, thanks for your input. I think Shiva, you are here, right? I think you're hiding as one of the Kates. Shiva?
Premjit?
No, Premjit is a Kate. There are three Kates. So one is Premjit.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think whoever used the link that Kate
Yeah,
provided.
Kate, you sent the link, so I clicked the link and I came in. So
got it.
we are all assuming your identity now.
Okay, so what?
Your picture looks different.
All right, so this is you, right? Let's hear from you.
From me, Asif?
Yeah.
I think this is a very interesting topic, and in a way, I'm deeply perturbed by what is going on. And if you ask me about the work front, about year back, I was trying to develop something for intelligent contact centers, and like I was going to a conference where Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Cisco, everybody is fighting for that, how intelligent we're going to do, and the main thing was how many agents we could replace.
Yeah.
That's the measure of success. And nobody's talking about it easily, but then everybody's saying, okay, I could reduce my capacity by this much. And I do not need to put my contact center in this country or that country. And I could just do it something online. And then I was just thinking, like, are we taking away jobs from people who could have gotten the job? And then there's this topic coming up of this universal basic income.
Yes.
And it kind of irritates me. Like we have to think that, and I feel by the time our kids next like 7-10 years, they may need the UBI, universal basic income.
Yes.
Because it is so rapid and so exponentially things are getting advanced. And then the way I see the wealth and the digital divide getting so big, the chasm is so huge. Yes. Unless there's UBI, people may not be able to survive. And so that is it like a hyperbole, or is it like I'm thinking too much? I just do not know. I worry and the thing is, I was thinking about what can I do about it. This what I was thinking about is let's talk about it, let's discuss about it, and then like in a way, I think there has to be a fix with some kind of policy making at this juncture. If no policy, if you just leave it to the corporations, we are there. Like we are a part of corporation, and our primary responsibility is towards the stakeholders, not to the environment, not to the social responsibility. People think about what is the number one goal: make money for our stockholders, and that's the goal. People, all the companies live by, whatever they say, unless they're forced to. So there has to be some kind of policy thing, and this is a capitalist country, and then socialist is not any better. This is like, but the thing is, unless there is a safety net that is mandated, I don't think people are going to get it. That's why I think like if not as an engineer, but at least as a voter or a social influencer, what I try to think about it, at least communicate, and then. But again, like what I see there, at some point, the AI is a blocker because we operate in some kind of echo chambers. Like you get recommendation because you look at the AI, and similarly the religious zealots, they get that kind of narratives all the time. Hey, how come your religion is victimized and XYZ is molested, and then this and that, and it kind of like makes you angry. So these are kind of groups. The AI is doing it, perpetrating it, like, and that whether it is like here the elections happen and people don't believe who won. Similarly, like whose God is real God, like that kind of debate happens, and there are hundreds of proofs and hundreds of instead of the AI and the internet being source of knowledge, people have just faked it. And so when you had this experiment, right, wisdom of crowd, I was thinking about when you're doing this one, okay, that may be the right first time, but the AI is going to manipulate the whole wisdom by virtue of advertising and mind mapping my brain, and giving me such a way that I will start believing something which is fake, but I will start believing it to be true because I'm repeating it.
That's right.
Subconsciously.
Remember, the wisdom of crowd works only when the crowd is each thing in the crowd, individual in the crowd is uncorrelated with other individuals.
Indeed.
AI is doing is making them all correlated, so it becomes the mob of crowds rather than wisdom.
Absolutely. And then the example you talked about, like the drones, etc., is a reality. Like it happened in recent war between Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Are you serious? It was actually used. Wow.
Yeah, so it happened, right? So the drones from Israel and Turkey were used. So there are Israel drones are called kamikaze drones, which is what you're talking about. It's kamikazes, you go to do suicide mission. They can go 10,000 feet up in the air, and they keep coming till they realize it's accurate and more. If you don't find a good target, they go back and for charging. But the moment it fights and then realize it's enemy pattern, they come and blow themselves up. So that's the reality. And similarly, the Turkish drones. Turkey is now good for nothing, but now they're good at doing drone manufacturing. And so these things, so Armenia lost battle in 1 month, despite the fact that they had a huge battery of airplane and military, couldn't do much. They're sitting ducks. All the drones were coming and killing them left and right. So after 1 month, Armenia surrendered. And and then the war was lost. So now I see that happening in this South China seaside, India-China border, Ladakh side. People are trying to still manage the battles with eyeball to eyeball, but with this kind of augmented reality or augmented drone swarming, whatnot. This is going to be kind of bad. Stakes are against you if you are weaker. So the thing is, who can destruct more? There's a race towards that. And one small mistake, like nuclear chain reaction was one thing, but now you could this AI chain reaction could be the other one, where I could destroy you if you destroy me.
Right.
And so that I kind of like if you want to think about it, it just gets me gloomy. Kind of like. Sometimes you feel like there's no hope, but then I say, okay, it's up to us. I know, like at my home, we don't put Alexa or Google Voice. Phones have it, but then I'm trying to kind of like turn off as many smart features as possible. unless it is absolutely critical. But then again, this is like a losing battle, because their phones and like everything knows you well, like they try to know you, make it really easy. At the same time, you give away all the rights.
Absolutely. We can't even log into our office computers without getting a code on the phone. So the phone is always nearby.
Yeah. And so this is where like there's a curse. And this is what I think. So I think you or somebody mentioned, right? Religion. One of it.
Yeah.
Religion probably was supposed to be the good thing when the whosoever started that thought process, right?
Right.
That person may have like hallucinated that he's like messenger of God, and then he may be thinking in all his wisdom, he may be just saying the best thing out there. Same with the like initial good. This could have done some initial good, but now you see it's all echo chambers. And same thing where I see like AI could do that kind of harm that religion has done on humanity already.
Nice, guys. It was. Thank you. Anybody else has something to say? I think this is a great discussion we as engineers need to have. Right? I think.
Yeah, I think only if we talk, this thing can be surfaced. At least we're conscious about it.
Yeah. Anybody has a thought, guys? By the way, did you guys like today's session, or you thought this is completely a waste of time, different from, because we are not covering a technical research paper, we are covering something more on the humanistic side.
I worked as a hardware engineer, and then I had my own green gift business that was all about trying to be ethical business, so it's very relevant to me.
Oh yes, okay, definitely is. You are actually, I really admire what happened to your business. You didn't carry that forward, or you did?
Oh, the gift business. I mean, it was fun to have a online green gift business focused on, you know, ethical, organic, fair trade. But the grind of the retail side, and 2008 was really rough. Nobody was buying anything, so retail was just terrible. So it's more that that the retail got old rather than the green and ethical got old. That I keep.
Okay. Nice.
Asif, I think for this session, it'll be good to have one more follow-up on the AI for good discussion, right? I haven't done any kind of resource gathering on that, but I know of a few friends who went off. Oh, you would know the name, Steve Tai. Do you remember Steve Tai?
Yes.
Yeah, so Steve Tai is retired. I mean, he made his money in Hyperion. He's retired, and he's kind of gone off into, he doesn't call it AI for good. He's gone into technology for good, right? So he's basically investing time in building things which will help the society positively.
Would you be willing to come and speak?
Who's Steve?
That would be
awesome. I mean, I haven't talked to Steve in a while, but I can reach out to him. He's right now doing some stuff with education, right? So he's basically working on creating technology that will make sure absenteeism in poor neighborhoods is decreased.
Oh.
Being able to measure absenteeism, create incentives for kids who frequently abscond from not coming to the school. It has a lot of benefits, right? The school gets funding when the kids show up. Kids get education only if they go to school, all that, right? So I think from an AI engineer perspective, if everybody had a side project that you're contributing on AI for good, then that's real positive impact each of us can do.
Yeah, that would be something really good. Actually, I was surprised. My daughter wants to she has already decided that she'll give her life to using AI for geriatrics, for old people, because apparently she researched and not many people, not enough care is being taken of the old people. So she has, for many years, it's not a passing thing, for many years, since the last 5-6 years I'm seeing, she has been doing a lot of things for the older people. And I think it's good to have a humanistic side to the engineering.
Oh, I will send a link here on our chat, which you might want to share with your daughter, Asif.
Sure.
It's a company which it's actually a startup where the guy, Andrew Ng was his guide, and he's kind of gone off and created a company. I mean, I'm actually interested in it because my brother's in the same space in India. So this guy's company is basically focusing on vision detection, basically using AI for vision, AI for a bunch of things to create an operating system for a home. And he's focusing on like elderly care as one area.
Oh, okay.
So the company is Casper.ai.
Okay. Send me the link. Huh?
Yeah, it's there on the chat. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Nice, guys. So I think this is a typical way to start this year. So this week we are going to cover, just as a heads up, we are going to do explainable AI. But in the explainable AI, if you remember, a lot of you have already been through some of it. I don't know how many of you remember, those of you who are the past students, you remember Shapley and Lime and so forth.
Oh, yes.
PDPs. I may cover a little bit of that. Actually, what I want to do is I want to cover that, review that. I want to do a special session, all free sessions, one day to Shapley, one day to Lime, and one day there's Lime and PDP, partial dependency plots and so forth. Can somebody create an interest list for me if you are interested in registering for that? This is a course in deep learning, so I feel compelled to focus much more on deep learning aspects of explainable AI. But I think those other aspects are also very important.
Okay, so an interest list for those who want deep learning on explainable XI?
No. Explainable AI,
Yeah.
Covering topics like, that are agnostic to deep learning, that cover deep learning also, but they're agnostic to it. They cover things like the Shapley and the Lime and so on and so forth. So just to give you an idea, Shapley was an economist of all things, a game theorist, who got a Nobel Prize for a very simple idea. He created a rule of how do you decide that if a team wins against another team, let's say a game of football or something, a baseball, then how do you apportion credit? How do you measure each person's contribution in winning in a fair way? And for the way to do that, he got the Nobel Prize. Now, how is that relevant to machine learning? If there are 10 different factors that are implicated in predicting something, maybe whether something is a cat or dog, or whether something is, or whether, or the credit score or something, how important was each factor? Feature importance, what you say. Now, typically you do feature importance using random forest or decision tree. Those are actually not very robust ways of doing it. It is the same thing. How much did each feature contribute to the decision, right, or to the score, or to the prediction? And the right way to do it is using Shapley. There's an excellent Python library that does it. I'll try to cover some of it, but I think these things, they deserve a whole day of their own. So is there anybody, by the way, who strongly is interested in this?
Me.
Balaji.
Very much interested. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, let's have a proper day for that. I'll see how much I can cover this week. This is going to be a packed week. I'll try to cover as much as I can on this. All right, guys, that's all for today.